We are here to help you speed up your transformation, enable you to innovate, and deliver solutions with real business value. If you need a partner to help execute your digital transformation plan, we got this.
StratPoint rallies Filipino pride. We develop homegrown talent and inspire them to contribute to technology development in the Philippines, and from there, make a difference in the whole world. We want to go beyond technology and business. At the end of the day, what matters is how StratPoint shape tech leaders who are conquering global challenges and igniting change for the better.
Good morning and welcome from the App to Super App webinar hosted by StratPoint. While we wait for more participants to log in, we have a few reminders to ensure the smooth flow of our program. For those on Zoom, there's a poll in Zoom that asks your familiarity with our topics today. Please vote and we'll use it as guide in today's webinar. We'd like to know you. Rename your profile using this format. Company-name. For example, StratPoint-Nikki Balderosa. Questions are welcome. Use the chat box for your comments and questions. Questions will be selected randomly and may be responded to by our speakers during the Q&A session. Those that were not answered during the session will be forwarded to our speakers, and you may expect a reply via email. By the end of the session, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please scan the QR code on the screen provided and answer the form. Enjoy the webinar and we'll start in a few more minutes. All right. Again, good morning and welcome to our webinar from App to Super App. How do you build a super app and make it fly, hosted by StratPoint. My name is Nikki Balderosa and I am the Learning and Development Manager here at StratPoint. StratPoint is a technology services partner for companies ready to accelerate their digital transformation journey. For over 20 years, we have provided modern digital solutions such as software development, cloud and data, AI, and quality assurance. Thank you all so much for your poll responses. We'll use them as guide in today's session. Let's see if we have more participants coming in. All right, I see them coming in. Okay, let's check out what's in store for us today. For today's agenda, we'll kick off this webinar with Carrie Santos, who'll talk about what makes an app super. Carrie is StratPoint's head of delivery and leads our software services business unit. He is also a member of the board of directors of the Philippine Software Industry Association, or PSIA. With over 20 years of experience in the IT consulting industry, Carrie guides businesses in achieving goals through customized frameworks. He also fosters customer partnerships and drives innovation for sustainable growth. Next, Jade Del Moral will take us through making super apps fly through the design thinking process. Jade is the head of the product team here at StratPoint. He has been in the product design industry for 15 years. He started as an industrial designer, and now he creates innovative products that are aligned to the client's business goals, user needs, and technical requirements. Super apps like superheroes do not come without challenges. Paulo Alcabao and Eric Conde will share insights about overcoming challenges by deploying a robust architecture design. Paulo is the head of all technical capabilities within StratPoint. He is responsible for the overall technical oversight on practice, tools, and processes in order to accelerate digital solutions with quality and speed at scale. Eric, on the other hand, is a solutions architect and one of the core technical contributors here in StratPoint software services team. As an architect, he bridges the gap between business and tech, allowing ideas to transform into valuable output. Likewise, Eric is StratPoint's web capability head. He spearheads innovation and enablement activities related to web development. Finally, we'll conclude with Carrie to drive home today's key takeaway points, and then I'll open the session for questions and gather feedback at the end. Are you all ready to join us in this super app adventure? Can you type in super in the chat box, please? Let me see your responses. Type in super. Come on. All right, I see some coming in. All right, awesome, everybody. Let me turn you over to Carrie Santos for his part. Carrie, all yours.
Thank you, Nikki. So again, my name is Carrie Santos, and we are here to talk about super apps because we've seen an increase in demands from our clients. And what more joy for us to share experiences with you, not to show off, but to set the right motion and influence in the technology market. Well, simply because it's a long journey to build super apps, and building the partnership is very important. So what is super app anyway? So building a super app means putting in a whole ecosystem of your business into your devices. And when we say an ecosystem, it's all about the customer, what they do, what they think, what they need and want, and how they behave on a day-to-day using your business. It's putting in your core business plus everything else that customer needs to feel good and continue to buy your product. So best examples are Grab and Gcash. Grab's journey from being a ride-hailing app to everything that can be delivered. From their core business to just having taxis, but it also adapted to what the customers are doing and asking for example, private cars for comfortable travels, motorbike rides for faster transportation. So lesson learned here is that the Grab super app is a journey. It's not a built as a one-time big-time app. And talking about cashless payments, which Grab also adapted from cash payment to cashless. So Gcash became also an ecosystem of financial transactions, and there's still more room to grow. Gcash has made its way by listening to their customers and fulfilling their pain points and addressing the important ones in urgency. Like, for example, when it first launched, so it needs to resolve the problems of reloading. So what Gcash did was to open different channels that is accessible to the customers by integrating their different businesses, whether it's their business or somebody else's business, but they need to put it there to solve this customer pain. So lesson is you have to listen to your customers in order for them to stay and keep using the super app. Okay, can you Go back, please. I clicked twice. Yeah, okay. So what we're saying here is that it is all about bringing convenience as a value to the customer so they keep using it. What kind of convenience does your super app bring to your customer? For example, rather than me going to the grocery for 3 hours, I could just grab it, right? Spend about 15, 30 minutes browsing, order, and then wait. Then I could use the 2.5 hours making extra money. And I don't mind paying extra 200 pesos for the delivery charges if I can make another, 2,500 pesos for the time I gained. And I will use that extra money, which I will just cash it to my kids who are in school if I forget to give them their daily allowance in the morning. So grab it, Gcash it. Those are the actionable terms that becomes part of my day-to-day activities. These are the words, the terms that, it becomes a household name. Though that is the goal of the super app. And so how do we build super apps? And looking at the big picture of digital transformations, there's so many aspects to consider. Business process, organizational culture, people competencies, enterprise architecture. And that in itself is a journey that can be overwhelming. But for today, this webinar, we will just highlight on 3 principles for us leaders. To make it simple, I'll discuss each point a little bit later, but let me just go through the 3. So first is to become an agile organization. Agile is not just for software development, as we know. Agile's principle can be applied to every aspect of the business, and it applies to every person in the organization. Second is to have that curiosity test quickly. We leaders have to have that perception on the business, on the customers, that we should test that ideas very quickly, get it out in the market, and adapt to the customers' reactions, responses. And the third is to create the tech runway strategy to release quickly and optimize later. Because again, we have to have that curiosity to test. So creating the runway for technology in a leaner implementation so that our investments are worthwhile and you can realize the value intended for the money you spend. So let's take a look at each one. So becoming an agile organization seems to be an easy thing, but it's not, since we will be dealing with people. And from our experience, leaders should focus on the people first, and technology can always follow next. With the people that we have to instill the right behavior and the business attitude for them to perform their respective roles. We have to give inclusion and empowerment for them to enjoy and grow their jobs. But also giving that empowerment, it's very important to give the accountability. They have to be accountable for decisions and making them responsible for those decisions for them to correct their mistakes and at the same time enjoy successes. Next is we leaders have to drive the mindset of relentless and ruthlessness to achieve goals and serve the customer. I'm just borrowing the term from Henry Aguda from Union Bank in one of our conversations. Ruthless in pursuit to achieve. Sounds a little bit improper, but put it into an analogy of context. Actually, that makes sense for the business to excel. The next main point is having the curiosity to test quickly. So how do we build this super app from where we are? From the business leaders to the project managers or product owners who drive the super app, they need to have that mindset of setting simple customers, feature goals, and then test it out. Now, the important thing here is to listen to the reaction of the customers and how they use it. And then from there, we drive and understand the user adoption and improve from there. Here, we have to prioritize addressing the challenges that the users are facing against adding new features. Because if we add new set of features, this will choke our operations trying to catch up with the backlog of adoption challenges. And here comes the agility that you need. So leaders need to have their resource allocations or budgets or any resource to be flexible enough to divert to where it is needed. If the product roadmap does not make sense at any point in the plan because of the customer behavior changes, we have to revisit, replan, and then again, all our resources should be agile enough to pivot as needed. And my third main point is having that technical runway for a long-term optimization. So we have to choose the technology that are flexible to quickly release apps. There are many options that we can choose from, whether we buy platforms or commercial products or custom built apps. The point is the technologies should be able to change to fit how the user adoption is running. In our experience, we have seen customers buy platforms, but eventually spend another 50% building on top of it because what we found on their customer adoption, the platform doesn't fit, right? So they build a few more on top of it. Some customers totally threw away the platform after few releases because they saw customer adoptions are very low. It cannot be addressed in time. So there, what we're saying is not custom built apps may not be the best, or buying platforms may not be the best as well. What we're saying here is that there has to be a balance. No? So the point again is the chosen technology should be able to quickly release to the market, test, customize, and adapt to the customer reaction. Your technology architecture should be plug and play as well. You can change it on demand, turn it on, turn it off, because we always expect changes in our customer behavior. And also looking at the future business, you will want to own your data. So for example, currently there is the coming of the AI-enabled system. Your technology should be able to be ready for these changes. The technical details on what to design and how to implement in a lean approach will be discussed by Paulo and Eric. But for now, let's take a look at how to incorporate listening to the customer processes in our product design, which will be discussed by our head of product design, Jade. Jade, take it away.
Thank you, Gary. Before I begin, I just have a quick question for the audience. Okay. Can we see a raise of hands? How many in the audience is or has been part of a team that creates a super app? Raise of hands. All right. Thank you. For those who haven't worked in developing a super app, don't worry. I will take you through our recommended design thinking process in creating a super app. Before you start building a super app, you need to regroup and discuss these amongst yourselves. What are the factors to consider when creating a super app? The first item is the most important of all. As Carrie mentioned a while ago, the core business will dictate the functionality of the super app, and it will give you a clear perspective on the direction you want to go. Examples of core businesses are taxi hailing app for Grab, and online shopping platform for Shopee and Lazada. I remember a quote from Spider-Man No Way Home. If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. Your core business will define your super app. Product relevance is next. You can identify product relevance by talking directly to our customers. Asking them directly what they want will help us identify features that they will use. Before we move to the next item, I recall the project we did with Ayala. We have invited Bar Chu, project manager of ISG of Ayala Property Management Corporation, to help us better understand the value of our first two items. Bar, can you enlighten us why it is important to establish the core business functionalities and relevance to our customers before we start building our super app?
Hello, Jay. Thanks for having me today. As you know, since our initial implementation, our figure shows less attraction to our intended users. Subsequently, we asked our customers on why, and their feedback were used as a leverage to come up with a major development on our current mobile app.
Thank you, Bar, for that insight. So again, core business functionality and relevance to customers will drive the development of your super app.
Yes, we reached to our business group and presented the feedback coming from our customers. The reason to establish the core business the functionalities is to optimize the relevance of the app to the customers based on the feedbacks received. With more functional app, the customers will be enjoined to register and to use it to their convenience and advantage.
Thank you, Bar. Next is to identify, some technical difficulties there. Next is to identify problems which can be solved by your business. This can also be captured by talking to your customers. Once you've identified these issues, you can check your product if you're providing the solution to your customers' needs. If not, you need to ask yourselves, how can we provide solutions to their problems? Another question to ask yourselves is, do you even need a super app? If your core business functionalities are already enough to your customers, adding features that are not relevant may add complexity to your product. The last item is additional features. Adding features that are relevant to your customers and users offers choices and convenience that will help boost your core business. Once you've taken these 5 into consideration, you may now begin designing your super app. But how exactly do you do that? Let me take you through 5 steps. Let's start with step 1, conceptualize. Our main goal here is to create a vision of what our super app should be once it's done. This is a design thinking framework, a collaborative framework for product design. The team to handle this are the business team, design team, and tech architects and leads. Our first item is the discovery phase. We need to learn relevant information so that we can start the conceptualization of our super app. This would include learning about the user and customer persona, business process and goals, who are our competitors, and other relevant information we can use. Second item is the define phase. Information from the discovery phase could be overwhelming. This stage will help us narrow down these information and help us better to our advantage. We can define the business goals and identify the top problems worth solving. This means we need to have a metric to measure the success of this product. This would also dictate our design direction. Next is the ideation phase. Once we've set the design direction, we can now bring in ideas that would help us solve the top problems and achieve the business goals. This is the part where we start building the super app concept. Our vision should be clear and defined. But keep in mind, Adding functionalities should enhance your core business, not add complexity to it. Then, once the idea is ready, we can now proceed and prototype it. This is the time we create a mock-up of the product. The intention is for the mock-up to represent our solution. Excuse me. This is the time we create wireframes with the ideal look and feel. Next step is user testing. The key to this step is to get actual people that fits your target profile and get real and unbiased feedback from them. I remember from the Ayala project, we did this user testing. Bart, can I ask you another question? What was the benefit of user testing in our project?
User testing. This is actually to test whether we have the right formula, the right experience for them to navigate, to use our property services, which we actually convey through the mobile app.
Thanks for sharing, Bart. As mentioned, there are several benefits of user testing. After validation, we iterate the design a few times until we are satisfied with the output. Then we compile and organize all the requirements. Then we prepare everything for development, create the product backlog and technical recommendations. For this initial output, we shall be focusing on the MVP or minimum viable product. To help us better understand what MVP is, this is an illustration of how it should be defined. Imagine your goal is to travel from point A to B. That's your business goal. Your vision is to build a car to take you there. Imagine this car is your super app. Start simple. A skateboard, while very simple and not as fast as you would want, already meets your business goal. Start there and test. Imagine the skateboard as your MVP. You don't need to build everything right away. Test and evaluate customer or user feedback, then iterate and enhance. Now you may ask, why didn't we just build the car right from the start? Building a car with robust features right away puts you at risk of investing significant resources only to find out later that these do not fully meet customer needs. Before we launch a product, we need to have a plan because we need to ensure the success of the product development. For this planning stage, the business team, product leads, and technical leads shall be working together. We should start with prioritization. During the conceptualization phase, you need to define the user goals, then rank them based on business values. Example of a user goal are login, create form, pay bill, etc. Identify the features needed to satisfy each user goals. For the login, you have the SSO or single sign-on for Facebook or Google, user password input fields, forgot password, and others. Then, gather the technical leads to estimate the features. Make sure to scope out all tasks before you let the team estimate. Common mistake is to base the estimates on UI screens. Then think of the other dev efforts like system integrations and an API. It is ideal for a business analyst to guide the tech team in identifying the tasks embedded in every step of the user goals. Next is to create the roadmap. Based on the estimates, you can now set dates for your deliverables and define the size of the development team. This is critical, especially if you have a target date for your product launch. To better explain the product roadmap, here is an illustration. For example, your super app requires a web and mobile app platform. You can create two teams to work in parallel, web and mobile app. You can also set the target dates for the product releases. Here in the example, the MVP phase started a month before phase 2, and that phase 3 needs to start a month and a half after the MVP phase. What does this tell us? It means we need multiple teams for the web, and also it could be that the mobile team will start as a big team, then divide themselves in the middle of phase 5. Now that we know what to do and how to do it, let's develop the super app. Based on our development experience, Agile has proven to be incredibly effective framework, promoting transparency, adaptability, collaboration, and value-driven outcomes. Hence, it's also our recommended framework in building super apps. So, from the high-level concept, we now have an idea of the MVP features. Now, we refine the concept before we start development. This could be another design thinking or just an ideation session at the start. Our goal here is to create requirements for development with clear and detailed information. Requirements creation will be in parallel with development, given that all requirements are completed before every sprint starts. In Agile, sprint means a period where the development team commits to finish a set of features. Then after 2 to 3 sprints, we validate the features through user testing. Getting feedback early in the development can save us time and money by avoiding developing incorrect or unnecessary features. Based on the feedback, we can revise the designs, then update the product backlog and tech architecture if necessary. Repeat until all requirements are done for this phase. Pao will discuss this framework later so you can understand it better. Before we release our product, engage the expertise of the business team and marketing team in driving the release. First is to prepare and plan. Prepare items that would be critical for the product launch. Strategize how to execute the task needed. And last is to promote the product. Promoting your product to different channels will increase the chance for registrations and signups. After the initial release, we don't sit down and let it become the best version of itself alone. Remember, even superheroes need self-reflect and adjust. They don't always get things right at the first time. The last step is designing your product to improve. From the defined metrics during the design thinking, this is the part where we measure them. First is to get user feedback. This can be done by talking directly to your users or get user ratings and feedbacks from the App Store or Play Store. Next is to gather issues and problems. Then, look for opportunities and ideas. From the insights and feedback, you need to dig deeper in their thoughts, discuss with the team, and come up with recommendations. Then, analyze the data and plan to execute. We can do this by reading between the lines and understanding what customers really want. Plan by prioritizing the items based on business value. Last is to iterate. Update your product backlog, then include the new items to your next development phase. It is also important to note that creating super apps do not come without hiccups. Here are common challenges in creating a super app. First, the scope is overwhelming. Most of the business teams wants everything to be done at once. This is not practical and may cause rework, which means loss of money and time. The idea here is to prioritize based on business value. Next is user consideration or minimum to none. I remember a quote from Frank Chimero. People ignore designs that ignore people. When most requirements are focused on business goals without considering user needs, people will ignore your super app. Next is rework and changes during development. This will occur if the roadmap is not clear. So set a clear product vision and do your roadmap. Relevance to the product is poor. Also, related to the other item, people will never use your product if you fail to provide purpose. Make the super app necessary and indispensable to your customers by staying relevant to their needs. Undue focus on competition. Some business tend to focus on what features the competition has. They want to be bigger and better than what's out there and totally ignoring what their core business function is and its relevance to their customer. And last, delays of the process due to approvals, permits, and licenses. These happen a lot. I recommend we plan ahead and prepare for all of these. So to wrap up the key points in designing super apps, first, conceptualize the core business. Start with the high-level vision of the product, then create clearly defined requirements before development, and create a roadmap and update them when needed. Next is to develop efficiently. Roadmap is a guide, and agile methodology is the ideal product development framework. Then, get feedback from real people. I would like to highlight this item. Actually, even if you mess up the design or development, getting feedback and meeting user expectation will be the key to a successful super app. Next is to add features that would enhance the user experience to your core business. I suggest you do this in increments to avoid rework. And lastly, improve and evolve. A great super app's journey never ends. It's always improving and evolving. Based from the success of the super apps that we know, they never stop growing. Now let's imagine we're done designing our super app. What's next then? Paolo and Eric will talk us through how a robust architecture can reduce challenges when building our super app. Pao, over to you.
Thank you, Jade. So, with the great power and potential of a super app, there's great responsibility as well in order to make things work properly. It takes that right environment to really handle that complexity and yet continue to deliver that value to the end user. You would need the right architecture, capabilities, teams, processes, and tools in order to really accomplish this. We'll first be discussing some important concepts to really keep you on track after you've gotten your requirements straight through design thinking. First, I'll be speaking a little bit more on architecture principles. And second, the need to constantly manage and evaluate your risk. Now, first, it's important to craft that environment around how you build and execute. So thanks to the foundation you got from design thinking, you really have a potential strong start, which you can use to implement your architecture and your application. Now that you've clarified your high-level intent, goals and policies in your strategy and objectives, as well as some specific features and concrete items in your requirements, it's important to really note that these two concepts are tightly bound together. You should really not consider one without the other. Because requirements without consulting your strategy and objectives really end up being unguided and unfocused, potentially not really targeting your overall intent. And at the same time, if you just have strategies and objectives, but really haven't formulated requirements from them, you don't really have a concrete plan in order to accomplish this. Now, on to architecture principles. This is often overlooked, but these principles are very important because they serve and function as a guide for the decision-making and execution for your team. Driven by your strategy, these help craft your environment and the way your teams work by narrowing down your approaches and predetermining certain trade-offs that you may want to avail. One good example of architecture principle in action was the Amazon 2002 memo, roughly, famously known as the Bezos API mandate, wherein he made it clear to everybody within Amazon that all services and functions would now have to communicate and pass data through APIs. This could be considered one of the initial factors around the rise of microservices within Amazon due to the value of data flow as well as flexibility to externalize and execute for external developers as well as external organizations. But in essence, also having that trade-off wherein you added that complexity and execution as well as that need for really strong governance and oversight, which meant that their marketing group couldn't necessarily request data from development or other departments without passing through the API. And two, if any department or any team chose not to do APIs, then quite clearly mentioned by Bezos, they will be fired. Now, principles really function as that guide because they drive your behavior and how you fulfill your requirements and help resolve conflicts and trade-offs, especially when there's a little bit of a discussion or a debate. Now, it forces really you to determine what is really important, makes you think hard about really the trade-offs that you're willing to make. This limits your choices, whether on what technologies you can avail of or what approaches your teams can try. But be careful in applying your principles, because too many would add too many restrictions and potentially reduce the flexibility and ability to respond of your team. Now, on constantly managing your risk, there are always risks. What's important really is how you handle them. That proper balance and mix ensures that you continue with speed while really maintaining your desired level of quality and efficiency. You always need to constantly measure the balance against your current circumstance or current state. Certain risks which may seem appropriate for you when you're still a small startup or small project may no longer be applicable if you're now a larger project or a larger organization or enterprise. Now, one important thing to note is because of this, you need to continuously reassess and realign with your entire team, not just on the typical risks such as time, cost, or scope, but even on technology choices, whether you can avail of newer technologies or you have to stick with proprietary or more established. Risks around communication, where you can choose to have a co-located team, remote work, or whether you're hiring offshore. Operational risks around dependencies to other systems, functions, etc. Even in terms of cost, whether you're measuring whether it may be more appropriate for you to have initially high CapEx or OpEx in order to better scale or experiment. And of course, even risks around resources, whether the technology or hardware you have is readily available and whether you have the people who are able to develop for you. Now, to speak specifically on the technical challenges and risks that may come, as well as potential ways to mitigate or overcome them, I will hand you over to Eric.
Thank you, Paolo, for walking us through with the architecture principles and reminding us to be aware of not just the benefits, but also of the risks design decisions may have for our super app. To reinforce what we need to prioritize, I am here to bring to your attention some of the critical architecture challenges we need to tackle. So super apps needs to be able to cater to multiple services, features, and integrations, all in a single platform. As an architect, I can personally say that designing and implementing a robust architecture which can successfully support a super app is a significant technical challenge. So in the following slides, I will be discussing critical challenges we need to address, specifically reliability and scalability, partnerships and integrations, as well as maintainability. For each of these, I will be providing recommendations of platforms and services you can use for your super app journey. Starting off with reliability and scalability. Super apps commonly supports a large user base with varying demographics, each with their personal needs from the platform. Therefore, it goes without saying that super app will need a much higher level of reliability and scalability. General challenges we would face would be heavy concurrent use of our super app will tremendously impact our servers. Load will be unevenly distributed. Some services may have more demands versus others. Our super apps will also need to be able to handle and tolerate any infrastructure failures. Consequently, it should have the ability of being able to scale or fail over to healthy resources, guaranteeing uptime for our super app. It also needs to be able to maintain a high level of performance. As our application scales, it is common to see degraded performance, which a super app needs to deal with. And lastly, super app needs to also consider cost, so in order to be sustainable. Saving strategies should be implemented to be more cost effective. So in order to support reliability and scalability, we have the following recommendations. Having modular designs allows us to segment business functions into small isolated chunks. So this will in turn enable us to organize our teams and focus on specific domains. So in the previous diagram, payments can be done by its own team, e-commerce by another, and so on and so forth. Reliability is the ability of our super app to still perform and function when it is expected to, no matter the situation. So for super apps, it is very crucial for fault isolation, automatic failover to healthy resources, redundancy, and disaster recovery to be in place. by leveraging event-driven and asynchronous architectures for processing transactions will allow us to respond significant our response time to significantly improve. So this improves our user experiences and allows our super apps, time to process and scale servers as needed. By implementing caching and CDN strategies, it helps us in terms of deloading our servers. By having this in front of our application and databases, cache data and information can be served to the client request, allowing for much faster response times. And lastly is automation. So automation is what will allow our super apps to grow and meet its demand seamlessly. So there are limits as to what us humans can cost effectively operate and manage. So with the magnitude of features and volumes of users we are serving, automation will be indeed a required superpower in our toolchain. So automation can be leveraged in several segments of our super app development, from infrastructure, deployment, testing, security, and operations. All of these together will directly or indirectly contribute to cost-effective architecture designs for our super apps. So StratPoint is an AWS partner here in the Philippines. Our solutions may vary depending on the requirements, but mostly we design applications using serverless first architectures. AWS Lambda shown here would be one of the core services of that. Kubernetes is also another platform we can use to bring portability to our application. This can be deployed in any cloud provider as well as on-prem servers. For database options, it needs to have a specific quality that aligns with our super apps needs. Features such as horizontal scalability, high availability, geo-distribution, and support for hybrid and multi-cloud deployments are some of the characteristics we may need. The primary purpose of a CDN is to speed up delivery of our contents as well as help deloading our servers. So it helps protects our super app also from DDoS attacks because it acts as a shield for our origin servers. And I highly recommend to use continuous integration and continuous development platforms or services to help automate, improve, and allow us to consistently deliver our services. Also, by leveraging infrastructure automation solutions to provision and manage resources our services will use, we will increase the agility of our delivery substantially. Knowing exactly what is going on with the internals of our super app is crucial in maintaining reliability. So this will be an impossible task without having observability and monitoring platforms in place. Lastly, in testing space, we have Selenium and Apache JMeter. So they are used for automation and for performance testing, respectively. Both of these are open source and something you can consider for your super app implementation. Moving on to partnerships and service integrations. So super apps rely heavily on partnerships and service providers that offers wide range of services. So choosing the right ones that aligns with the business and technical strategies of our super app is crucial, because that will be what will power or constrain our application. So managing a large number of integration will have its own set of challenges, not just on the technical, but on the business side as well. On the business side, partner management, which involves building relationships, promotions, discounts, negotiations, contracts, for instance, is something that needs to be agreed upon. On the technical side, the more services we have, the more complex managing those integrations are. And as discussed earlier by Karen and Jade, building and utilizing the benefits we get from our partners and services will help us significantly in our goal of completing our super app. However, there are the following challenges. There may be cases wherein service compatibility and interoperability will be constrained. Does it even support the connectivity protocols we require, for instance? We would also like to ensure that the services we integrate to will be able to provide the same, if not better, reliability and availability we're aiming for. Application downtimes is the worst experience a user of our super app should never encounter. Do they also have the same level of commitment in terms of security as we have? Will it be able to scale and maintain high performance as demand comes in? And lastly, integrating all of these services for our super app will have a toll to our engineering team. So this is also something that needs to be addressed. Our recommendations to address this would be the following. So shortlist, inventory, and map out all of the services we plan to use. Identifying the benefits, constraints, limitations, or any red flags early on will save us cost, time, and effort. So is there a good documentation available? Are there available partner trainings? Is there excellent support? No hidden costs? What about the integration options? What's the performance? Does it even scale? Also, don't reinvent the wheel. When we can, use services and platforms that are purpose-built for our goals. So in this case, use existing API management services that will not only allow us to potentially build faster, but build it in a manner that does not sacrifice security and performance. Being able to track and monitor errors and performance hits to our super app is important to guarantee that our application is functioning and performing as expected. And design with security as a priority. Encrypt whenever possible when processing and storing data. Configuring networks to prioritize private communications first before choosing a public route will go a long way in securing our application. Modern applications are also expected to be very fast or responsive. So this is where techniques like async and event-driven architectures can help. By designing our super app with this approach, we will have loose coupling between our service components, resulting to the responsiveness the users of our super apps expects. For enablements, check if there are direct partner trainings available that could accelerate our engineering team's capability for using those services. And lastly, document everything. So this will be used not just by our engineering teams, but can also be used or referenced later on by support. So very crucial for onboarding and knowledge transfers. API platforms and services that can provide standardization out of the box and simplifies the process of building, managing, and securing our APIs will be very powerful and something we should consider. Error detection and alerting platforms that would allow us to search, analyze, visualize data will help us in mitigating and resolving problems our super apps will encounter. And by using asynchronous and event-driven designs with our super apps, it can supercharge it and allows it to deliver highly responsive application that can scale and meet user demands. And lastly, for documentation and knowledge base, we recommend the use of Slide and Notion. But again, depending on your case, you may use different tools also. So going to the final architecture challenge for my presentation would be maintainability. So we have emphasized that super apps are not your typical application. In all layers of development, the challenges and complexities are dialed up several-fold. In order for us to maintain a high level of quality and delivery rate, we also need to focus on designing our application to be maintainable. So failure of doing so will result in poor application performance, declining delivery rate of features, increased operational cost, and more importantly, reduced customer satisfaction. So a highly maintainable super app will allow us to easily add service and features. So it should have the flexibility of being able to integrate easily to various systems and even allow modifying of existing ones. To guarantee quality and performance of our services, it needs to be fully testable. So it is common for super apps to have an overly complex source code that it makes it very difficult to test. It should also allow us to be able to consolidate functions into shared modules, for instance, but be flexible enough that we can separate said services into more granular ones as needed. And lastly, being able to easily refactor and improve our application and even remove old code over time. So what we recommend to gain a high maintainability would be the following. So going back to the use of modular design. So in StratPoint, we leverage strategies like domain-driven designs. So this allows us to organize our code based on specific business domains. This does not only clarify the boundaries of super apps in terms of functionality, but also how each of those domains will be interacting with each other. Other patterns such as microservices, front-end, micro-front-ends, functional and modular monoliths can be used with this pattern. Without observability and monitoring, we'll have no means to indicate whether our services are even working. So open source services shown here, such as Prometheus, Jaeger, and Grafana, are some of the cloud-native options that we can use that gives us this visibility. By continuing with our modular approach, we are also gaining the benefit of being able to scale our services independently. And as mentioned earlier, automation technologies is what can give us the agility we need to scale our super app. So by using platforms and services and tools that provides automation, we are significantly reducing operational costs, not just on the financial sense, but on the time and manpower needed to accomplish the tasks. Use automation to your deployments, testing, security, notification and alerts, system updates, and even transaction processing. In the previous slide, I also mentioned to document everything. So this also holds true for our application's technical documentation. So add documentation to your source code, create API function and functional specifications, architecture decision records, and integration documents. Regularly evaluate and prioritize technical debt. So refactor whenever necessary and allocate time for maintenance tasks as part of the development schedule. So by doing this, we will maintain the health and stability of our super app. Lastly, invest in training programs and knowledge transfer sessions to ensure that the teams are equipped with all the necessary skills and expertise they need to effectively and confidently maintain our super app. Do not let the knowledge be siloed. So to cap off, there are challenges like data privacy and security, as well as regulatory compliance that I did not discuss here, but also something that I advise you to strongly consider. So that said, given the plethora of technical challenges that need our utmost attention, having the right team, culture, tooling, as well as a refined strategy for execution is what will make your super app fly. So to further elaborate on this, I am handing you back over to Hug.
Thank you for that, Eric, for providing quick insight into the varied challenges and the ways you can go about tackling them. So we really need to talk about the team right now in order to make them high performing. So first, I'll be talking specifically on the team, then a process framework and structure around how they can work and continually improve. And then finally, how the team should be thinking about reuse of particular components and eventually evolving your architecture over time. The illustration that you see here on the slide comes from the book An Elegant Puzzle by Will Larson, and really describes how most teams are treading water, really have a hard time really executing to their best potential, mostly able to deliver, but not quite paying off debt and not necessarily having that leeway to experiment and truly innovate. We'll first be talking about 3 critical concepts on the team in the next slides: proper organization, having the right skills, and managing the knowledge. So first, on creating this team, first, this is a quote from Will Larson again, that the most powerful unit of work really is a gelled team. People who know how to work together and are practiced at working together can accomplish truly remarkable things. Now, key in really the team itself is you need to have the correct sizing. If the team's too large, it becomes inflexible and inefficient. If it's too small, it borders on micromanagement and potentially is a waste of effort. Second, you have to create clear boundaries and a proper framework for interaction between the team. You want to remove bureaucracy and help streamline operations. This is where generally what you think of shift left concepts coming into play. And finally, you have to be very clear and consistent around the proper scoping and responsibilities to avoid misunderstandings, mishandoffs, and other potential issues in communication. Now, part of this on the team now is really having a multidisciplinary team. You would want multiple disciplines in one team, a team that can execute and provide value from end to end with minimal bureaucracy and miscommunication. Ideally, this would mean end to end from product, design, your tech team itself, sales and marketing and operations, all working closely together in order to deliver that end goal. Also important around that is you have a clear view on what your team is able to do, whether they have that right set of skills, so that you can determine areas of strength and weaknesses to avoid issues of potential bottleneck around skills and to leverage and maximize your performance. Now, on knowledge management, it's a key component, especially over the long term. It's not just really your content around static, such as documentation, diagrams, write-ups, maybe even code, as well as having good external materials, but also dynamic forms of knowledge, such as your team should be able to communicate through Q&A forums and other forms of collaborative material in writing. What's often overlooked in a knowledge management initiative is you need to make the processes and tools fit. You need to make it easy to create references, search them, index them, because it's problematic if you have the info, but people who need it can't really search it or get it. Now, key also around this is constantly building your capability. This means having the proper training programs, mentoring within the team, as well as potential succession plans. Now, what does this mean for a high-performing team? In order to bring everything together, you really need that right team with the right skills and right training and knowledge transfer to have that high-performing team. Now, my next topic would be crafting and managing that process around how they might work. This is any good team needs a proper framework. The example that we have here really comes from TOGAF. There are others out there, and it's always best for you to get whatever references you feel are applicable or fit you, and tailor one that fits best your organization. A framework really provides that good environment for your team to succeed. Some key concepts to be discussed in the succeeding slides would be proper system of governance and oversight, a process for really maintaining and cascading knowledge, as well as some items around what should be documented and recorded. So first item in this diagram that I'll be talking about is the architecture landscape. In short, it's basically what you currently have. It's really important to document and note your status quo. You would want to avoid duplication in terms of and avoid wasted effort. You want to clearly see where you're strong, where you're lacking, where you can improve, and where it may take some effort in order for you to advance and continue or revamp certain areas. Next is really how you manage certain documentations, especially around your references and standards. It's important that not only are you getting from good sources externally, which come from authority, frameworks maybe such as ITIL, TOGAF, the OWASP, and so on, but you also update your own references with your own internal learnings from the project. Maybe you have RCAs from your project or retrospectives or even team meetings. Now, what's clear is that you also have an item around here where you have a governance log. Logging and recording decisions is key because you need alignment around context and basically the historical reference around your decisions. So everybody on your team and even potentially others are aligned around the why and the intent why these decisions were made. This is not just technical governance, which could be reflected in documents such as architecture decision records, but also project management items such as maybe milestones, project decisions, backlog, and roadmap. Also important to log around this is performance or metrics, because how do you know you're really succeeding or providing value when you're not really measuring it or you can't really define or quantify? And third, portfolio. What you currently have in regards to boundaries and purposes. So you would want to make sure that there's no conflicts. Now, capability is also important, as we mentioned earlier in terms of the team. This is your view around your team's capability to execute. Your view around the organization, which is clear scope and responsibilities, defining the boundaries. A view on the charter, which means your team should have clear lines of communication, as well as a clear process around how they would interact with one another. Next, it's clear that you also need to record your solutions, what you have as potential reusable building blocks to be repurposed and potentially used elsewhere. So some are mentioned here, such as potential storage solutions or emails, which can be reused in other parts of the system or maybe even other applications elsewhere. Now, next is it's also important to log and manage your record of needs or requirements. In Agile, this could be the product backlog. There's a need to record all of this in detail in terms of prioritization, context, and visibility. So the entire team is aligned on where we currently stand, on what we're already fulfilled and what not. Now, for those of you who are familiar with ITIL, this is the service value chain. The listed key activities here are what has been determined as necessary in order to really generate value for the end goal. What is key here, and what I would like you to take away, is that this is a cycle, and that learnings from all of these activities are encompassed and flow into further improvement and then factored into future plans. Now, even with this day-to-day activities, these are just a smaller part of a larger framework of improvement and governance. With those day-to-day activities and the learnings and activities you have there, these are now managed under what you have as your governance framework, which thus results in aligned practices. And in turn, your governance framework is aligned to what I was mentioning earlier, to guiding principles, which forms into a efficient and very top-down and bottom-up as well, closely linked form of continual improvement. Now, your team should also have a mindset around reuse and recycle, because it's important to really maximize the gains from all of your efforts and planning and to avoid reinventing the wheel, as Eric mentioned earlier. Just as you would get and build new items or for your features, etc., from generic templates and patterns, you should also keep in mind that it's both ways, that the solutions that you can create, you should always also keep in mind that you can create your own libraries, your own frameworks in order to have more abstracted, more generic templates for future use and other needs. Now, your team, when evolving your architecture, it's important to note that each part of your architecture should have a clear purpose and drive value. Basically, keep it simple. You would want to start small and direct, and then add more components only as needs arise. Match it to your current needs and not necessarily far off potential future unsubstantiated future plans. But this doesn't mean that there's no particular data, so projections and data are key. So key takeaway is don't prematurely optimize. This results in unnecessary costs and unnecessary complexity, which would make things difficult for your team as well as your project as a whole. So to summarize overall, a lot of what really we mentioned is all about managing that complexity and really maintaining that strong framework and process of governance. Because you're dealing with multiple domains, multiple technologies, potentially multiple teams, integrations, as well as a lot of potentially competing interests and lines of business. We would want you to maintain your focus on providing strong user value despite the many factors and many challenges involved. So to bring you to key takeaways from this webinar, I'll hand you over now to Carrie.
Thank you, Paolo. Before we end this webinar, we'll give you or leave you some important points to consider. So in terms of organizational culture, your business principles and purposes have to be understood by all of your employees so that they will think, talk, and act towards your business goals automatically without even the policies in place or the guidance in place. People competencies should also be aimed to serve customers, not just upskilling in technology and development, but also extending to the skills that understands and provide value to the customers. Governance, and with these 2 points, governance and support systems for the people and technology as rail guides in the business and people performance have to be put in place as well, which matches the culture that you wanted to instill in your organization. To have business agility and an agile product management, we have to incorporate customer feedback into our super apps. Only build features that make sense for the customers first, and then listening and adapting to the customer's changing needs. And this will require you to have the ability to divert resources, most probably budgets, to urgencies, because the market and technology are fast changing and evolving over time. Remember that super app roadmaps change, but your goal remains the same, of providing convenience to your customers. In terms of technological agility, we suggest that you apply lean approach. Choose the technology that allows you to release quickly and test it. And then choose plug and play technologies as runway to emerging future trends. Building super apps is a journey. It evolves over time. Your organization needs an incremental and iterative mindset and culture in your operation. So that's about it. Thank you. I'll turn you back to Nikki.
Thank you so much, Gary. And to all our speakers today, Jade, Paolo, Eric, and of course, our guest, Mr. Bart Chu from APMC. Thank you so much. I've learned so much today, and I'm sure everyone in the virtual room did too. Let's open the session to questions that you may have. You may use the Q&A function here on Zoom, or if you're watching us live from YouTube via streaming, please comment your questions and we'll try our best to answer them. I'd like to invite all of our speakers to turn on your cameras and join me again on the virtual stage. Let's begin. Let me see if we have questions come in. I'll check YouTube and also here on Zoom. Okay, I have a first question here. Can you build a super app if you're not agile? Maybe Paolo, you wanna take this?
Sure, I'll take it. Thanks, Nikki. To answer that question quickly, it's quite difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but with all of the factors involved in developing an app and a super app, flexibility is actually key in order to be able to respond. So the agile processes actually give you that framework wherein you can build and execute, and yet pivot on a dime as new information and new problems come into play and adjust as needed. So,
Right.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you so much, Paolo. So pivot and realign, because that's what Agile allows you to do. Thank you. Next, I have another question here. How much does it cost? I think this is a very interesting question. How much does it cost to build a super app? Maybe Gary?
Yes. Okay. So I'll answer it in a way that I'm not going to mention an amount. But really building a super app is very relative on where you are at. You know, some customers starts with already a mature, they're already almost there and then just adding more to it. But some are really just starting up. So of course, when you're just starting up, the cost would be a little bit higher than those that have already been, doing this, or just shifting their current business from their apps right now to a super app. So very relevant. But if we are going to talk about revenues or ROIs, in the framework that we're using or suggest to our clients is that you have to take a look at not on a holistic view of the investments that we did on the super app, but more of the a more detailed one. For example, for every feature that we develop, we measure it in terms of revenue or value generated, and then the money that it comes or it generates, we can use that to reinvest in order to enhance the same feature or build more features so that you generate more value to your customers, and then that would make the super app more relevant, and users or your customers keep on using it and eventually generating more revenue to your business.
All right. So plan in phases, build in phases, profit in phases, and reinvest in phases. Thanks, Gary. All right. I have a question from Zoom. I have, what programming languages do you typically use to develop web apps and mobile apps? My question is meant to address the UI development languages. Maybe Jade or
No,
Eric?
yeah, I could take that one. So we typically develop using JavaScript framework. So for front-end development, we are heavy on React and Next.js. For back-end, we are
Mhm.
heavy on Node.js. For mobile development, so again, it depends on your requirements, but we often recommend use of cross development platforms like Flutter or React Native. But so again, depending on the requirements, we would either, select the best fit in terms of what we could use in terms of the requirements. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Eric. Okay, I have another one here. How long does it usually take to build a super app? So this is more on the duration. Carrie, do you wanna?
Sure. I would say it takes forever to build it. So why do you say forever? Because again, the journey or digitizing or transforming your business into a digital business, you have to get into the technology trends as well to make your business relevant again to your customers. So it's an evolving journey. The traditional products that we do, like the brick and mortar products and services, goes through that life cycle. We know that the product life cycle, right? From introduction to growing to maturing, and then the decline of that product, right? So for this super app, it goes through the same cycle, but as much as possible, we maintain it and prolong it at the maturity stage. Now, so because again, this is a digital product. It's easy to enhance. It's easy to make it more relevant than the traditional products or the brick and mortar products. So yeah, the objective is to make it relevant for a very long time, as long as you can. Otherwise, if you don't innovate for this product, you are forcing it to get into that decline stage, which is the end of life.
Dying its natural death. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carrie. Okay, I have another question here. What key features or functionality should be included in a super app to provide seamless user experience? So this is UX. Maybe Jade?
Okay. Well, I guess that would depend on the product. Well, like I've mentioned a while ago, before you specify or before you identify the features, you need to understand first what are the business goals and what are the user needs. Once you have established all those information, by that time you can identify what the features of your super app will be.
All right. Thank you, Jade. I have something interesting here. How can artificial intelligence or AI and machine learning be leveraged to enhance personalization and user engagement within super app? Who wants to take this?
Yeah, I can also take that
Okay.
one. And I think Derek also has a follow-up question, so I think Paolo can answer that after I answer this one. So for the AI question, so I think everyone knows already, have heard services like ChatGPT, Hugging Face, Google's Bard. So it's really powerful. That's why it's actually trending. So in the context of our super app, so AI algorithms can be deployed to continuously analyze user behaviors and adapt recommendations or content based on those interactions. So this will allow our super apps to immediately respond to user actions and adjust experiences, making it more relevant. So as Jade mentioned, and actually the whole talk, we were talking about relevance. So it can also be used to say analyze user-generated content such as reviews, comments, feedbacks, to gain insights in sentiment analysis, user preference, segmentation, and even trends, to enhance, again, personalization efforts. It could also be used to apply to recommendation engines. For example, AI can be used to provide product recommendations to based on user preferences, as well as analyze historical or even real-time data. So there could be more, but this is what comes to my mind when it comes to areas where we could capitalize with AI. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Thanks, Eric. I have an interesting question here. Have you seen the eGov PH Super App? What are your comments? How much did it cost? And what are your recommendations? Thank you. eGov PH Super App. I personally haven't seen it. Has anyone in the room? No. We'll look into it and then we'll share comments via email maybe. So I'll move on. Here, is 5G a requirement for the development of super apps? What are the requisites and alike for super apps? 5G connection? Anyone?
Yeah.
Pao?
I guess I can
Yeah.
take this. Yeah. 5G, not necessarily. It really depends on the functions and features which are involved, right? Since I assume generally why people ask for 5G is because of the speed. But
Mhm.
take into account that we've had quite a lot of super apps out in the world already, even before 5G was really mainstream or even out there.
Mm-mm.
So that sorry for the architect answer in that it depends really on what features you need involved. But more
Okay.
often than not, no.
All right. We have a follow-up question. I think this is follow-up to one of the questions earlier. Have you chosen not to use Flutter for web apps also? Have we
Okay.
ever chosen?
I'll take this.
Mm-mm.
Flutter for web apps. Currently, we've gone through a bit of an evaluation on that. We've deliberately decided not quite to use Flutter for web as of yet, because as we develop a number of apps, there's still a few immaturities in the framework for web
Mhm.
still. So if it's for simple, smaller features, we can, but we're waiting for certain changes on the changelog. So we're closely watching the maturity of the framework going.
All right. Thanks, Pao. Another one. It says on StratPoint website you use OutSystems. Can you use OutSystems to create a super app?
Okay, I'll take this as well. We are OutSystems partners, so I have, but okay, all joking aside, yes, it is possible to create a super app using OutSystems. But what you have to keep in mind are the clear indicators which we just mentioned with the webinar in terms of scale. So managing on how you would create the app within the OutSystems architecture is unique in its own way, but definitely possible. Different considerations from building it from native, but you just have to keep a few things unique to OutSystem in mind, such as, of course, you're isolated on you're on a single particular cloud, and there are certain other constraints of the platform itself.
All right, thank you. This one, I like this question. Why do super apps fail? What are the factors for failure?
Okay, so maybe I would have to answer that. We've seen some fail because the approach most of the time is a one-time, big-time kind of an approach, because they try to go ahead or leap ahead of the competition. As we've said in this webinar, that is not really the right approach. We have to really build the apps or the super apps, our journey to the super apps, considering how our customers would adopt it. It cannot just be, we have this idea and we think it's going to work, and then we build everything there that we think would be relevant to the users. That is the roadmap to failure. We really have to build it, test smaller things, and then listen to the customers, and then enhance, and then In that way, you build your relationship, your open relationship to the customers. And most of the time, in our experience also, while talking to the customers themselves, is we get also suggestions from them directly of what they really wanted from the apps or from the super apps. And that gives us a very good perspective on what to build.
Mhm. So just like in Jade's presentation earlier on MVP, start
Mhm.
small, test, get feedback, enhance and iterate, and do it again. Because as you've ended the session earlier, you said it's a never-ending journey. In one of the questions as well, you continue to grow, you continue to enhance, to make sure that it stays relevant to the customers. All right. I have a couple more questions left. What are the minimum regulatory and legal compliance, maybe requirements in launching a super app?
Yeah, I think I could somewhat answer that. So I think that the primary answer would be it depends. So if your super apps touches financial regular functionalities, for example, PCI DSS would be the one of the most general compliance that you need to handle. For health, you have HIPAA, but for the most part, I think the most crucial I think would be the data privacy part of the super app. So remember, we're holding a lot of information by having our super app, right? So user information, transactions, communication. So all of that needs to be, we're being trusted by the users to hold their data, and trusting us that we will do our part to make it secure. So in terms of being, I think, more of ethical, we need to be able to provide that security and guarantee to the users that we are actually doing our part in making sure that whatever communications that we're using are secured, how we store the data is secured. We're not storing anything, we're not storing any data that's not relevant to the current use of the super app. So things like that. But primarily here in the Philippines, there's not really too much. But again, depending on your business, what your business core is at, there may be some specific regulatory compliance with that. So my recommendations would be to get advice from compliance officers to what exactly we need to have addressed in the super app itself.
If I can add a bit, Nikki.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot that Eric unpacked there. There's a reason why compliance officers are there, because there's so many factors to involve, not just even in tech or industry, but even location. So even with like the data, it could differ between what are the actual requirements needed here in the Philippines, and if you have an app which you now need to access or processing end users maybe in Europe, where you have GDPR, etc. So there's quite a lot which goes into it. So it's very specifically in tune to your strategy, goals, and your actual implementation.
All right. Thanks, Pao and Eric. One more question. What do you think, personally, what is the best platform you can use to create a super app? Can you share more about its maintenance? Best platform.
Okay, very hard, because again, it's very similar actually to the last answer or the last question, in that it really depends on what you need. So as I mentioned earlier, when you have to tailor your approach to you and your organization. There's no one size fits all here. One size fits all approach. You really need to find out what really your goals and align your choice of technology, your approach, your team towards your strategy, your principles, your goals, and the business needs. The best platform is one which you carefully considered yourself and have matched appropriately.
All right. Thanks, Pao. Down to our last question. What for you is the best or most relevant super app that was developed? Are there problems or fields or industry that you can recommend where a super app can be created? Anyone?
Do you guys wanna answer that? I can share my preferences or my since I've seen a lot of projects already in my life. Okay, so most of the apps that we built and been building, I can't say it here, of course, because of privacy, but in terms of the most challenging was, I guess, from the telecoms. I guess we mentioned already GCash, which is part of Globe. I think that story and relevant to what we're also building, same journey. They started with, really simple concepts. And I have to tell you also that we started with also not a very good technical designs, but then again, in our minds, we're testing the concepts. We're testing it with how the customers would be adopting it. And then from there, once we have proven the concept works, or most of the time, some of the features also doesn't work. So we change it very quickly in order to make some adjustments with what the customers are doing. And then once we see that it's now gearing up or being used by the customers, that's how we try to optimize everything, meaning cost optimization, changing the technology in order to make it robust, scalable, and flexible. That journey of starting with something, concept, testing it, and then enhancing for both us partners and with our clients gave us a really good kind of partnership experience because we are both trying to solve problems at the same time. For us as partners, that's a great way to work with our customers. Being one with the goals, being one with the idea, and we've helped each other, really be successful under Super App.
All right.
Can I add a little bit on that?
Yep.
Yeah. So since part of the question was they're actually asking for potential hints, maybe on like industry or need, right? So one quick thing is look for a fundamental need or a non-niche market. Why? Because you would want that, by its own definition with super apps, you would want that ability to expand heavily. So if you look at the successful examples given by Carrie earlier, like Grab, everybody needs transport, everybody needs to go somewhere. Then GCash, everybody has to deal with financials, right? But if you have something like it's too niche or it's too limited to the market, it won't necessarily evolve into a super app. So go back to the fundamentals and look at the problem and the need that you're trying to solve.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your questions, and to our speakers, Gary, Jade, Paolo, and Eric, for the answers. We've taken note of the questions that we weren't able to address in this webinar. And as I've mentioned earlier, we'll respond to them via email, or if you have more questions, you can email us at hello@stratpoint.com. Also, all attendees will receive an email next week with the recording of the webinar. A replay link will likewise be shared on our social media accounts. We are at the end of the webinar, and we'd appreciate if you could share your thoughts and feelings on today's session, from app to super app, how to build a super app and make it fly. Go to the link in the chat box or scan a QR code on the screen and send in your feedback. For more information about super apps and StratPoint, please visit www.stratpoint.com and follow us on our social media accounts in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Again, my name is Nikki Balderosa, and I wish everyone a super awesome weekend. Super up, up, and away. Bye, everybody.